What are some ridiculous history facts? Ancient Romans would put sandals on the hands of sleeping people, then tickle their face so they would slap themselves. Et tu, brute? The Spartans never built a city wall, figuring that their reputation alone would mean no one would dare attack them. But, during the Persian War, the Persians, who had already burned Athens twice, hired a Greek guide to take them to Sparta. But when they got there, they saw a kinda crap-looking city without even a wall. They figured there was no way this place could be the mighty Sparta they had heard so much about. So they figured the Greek was lying and thus Sparta was spared. Edit, I'm remembering this from reading it in the book Persian Fire by Tom Holland. It's quite possible that I'm misremembering details or that Holland's text identifies this as a legend or story. Still, the book is a fantastic read and I heartily recommend it. The Battle of Bull Run, during the American Civil War, was called the Picnic Battle, because so many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started, and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. A Chinese emperor escaped an assassin by running around a pillar. After 2 hours, the assassin got bored and went home, and wasn't charged for his crimes. Just imagine. 20 minutes in, the assassin knows he looks ridiculous running around the same pillar this whole time, but he's kind of committed at this point. Besides, how much stamina could an emperor have, anyway? 40 minutes in, the assassin is wondering how much time an emperor has for CrossFit each week. An hour in, the assassin still running in circles trying to catch the emperor, all the while thinking this is so stupid, this is so goddamn stupid. He is beginning to wonder if he was given this mission as a prank. 90 minutes in, the assassin knows with horrible certainty that, whether he succeeds or fails, he's going to be the laughingstock of the whole empire. 2 hours in, both he and the emperor are still wheezing their way around the pillar. The assassin is not only tired and completely humiliated, but also realizes that he's in no shape to be able to run away after the assassination now, and figures his best bet is to give up and hope the emperor sees the humor in the whole situation. At US President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845, his pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing. Edit, lots of interest. Looks like someone went ahead and birthed a subreddit that's dedicated to TR stories. Join us over at r/Teddy Stories for more. There are a few pretty common stories about Theodore Roosevelt that get circulated on Reddit fairly regularly. Over the past few years, I've become, in some ways, addicted with the 26th president and his more than fascinating life. To the chagrin of all my family and friends, I've taken it upon myself to read as much as I possibly can about the man and share some of the lesser known stories with them. So here are some of my favorite. Also, currently at work, so these are mostly from memory. Also sorry for posting the same story twice, writing in a Google Doc then copying it over so work doesn't think I'm diddling on Reddit all day. Other TR enthusiasts, please let me know if anything's wrong and I'll update. Here's one. During the 1901 Republican nominations, TR was unanimously voted to be the vice president except for one vote, his own. He was adamant about not becoming the VP because he claimed, it is a stepping stop to nothing but oblivion. The big Republican bosses figured he could actually do the least amount of damage as the VP because every other role TR ended up in he would make it powerful and gain more popularity. Senator Hanna said to McKinley when TR became the VP that your only duty to the country is to live for 4 years. McKinley was, of course, shot and killed, making TR the youngest president ever to serve the nation. One more. Not many people knew about his relationship with the Emperor of the Badlands, Antoni Amadei Marie Vincent Manca de Vallombrosa, the Marquis de Moraes, a Frenchman who wanted to gain the throne in France and was raising money by doing all sorts of schemes in the Dakotas. He nearly challenged TR to a duel, and TR confined to his friend that he would have chosen long rifles at 7 paces because the Marquis was a better duelist. The Marquis quickly backed off because the long rifle at 7 paces would put the barrel against each of their chests. While also in the Badlands, his boat was stolen and he famously tracked the robbers down after a harrowing 3 days on the nearly frozen Little Missouri River. Once he found these men, he disarmed them and captured them. They were a known group and wanted all around the country. Now TR could have hung them on the spot, but he insisted they get proper justice and instead carted them 150 miles to the nearest town. During this trek, he became friends with the bandit leader and exchanged books and thoughts on the books the men had. TR stayed awake, watching the men for nearly 4 days straight, and returned them to the proper authorities. He received $50 and was technically a bounty hunter. I can't remember exactly, but I don't think any of them were hung. He would also read a book a day while president, and could memorize entire passages and pages. This was amazingly helpful because he would plan a meeting, read about the subject, and become an expert on the matter almost overnight. Edit, people are asking for more. So here's one more. While exploring the River of Doubt, a completely ludicrous adventure in itself, TR contracted malaria and had a high fever for a few days. Prior in the expedition, TR made everyone promise that if anyone was sick or injured that they wouldn't jeopardize the safety of the rest of the group and leave them behind. Well, no one could justify leaving TR behind, so they carried him along. At one point, he became so sick that he began deliriously repeating this line over and over again for days: "In Xanadu, did Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dome decree." It was the opening line to a poem, where the next line read: "Where Ralph the sacred river ran, through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea." This is from memory, I'm on mobile so it might not be perfect. I have a bunch more if people are interested. The Library of Congress recently released his presidential trove of letters. TR wrote over 250,000 letters, and none of these are transposed. I've been going through, finding the coolest ones, transcribing them, and recording them. I've discovered some awesome stories after reading nearly 7,000 of them. Here's a funny one where Roosevelt is criticizing President Wilson for not fighting in World War I. Edit, one last one. You guys are making my day. It's literally my favorite hobby to drink a beer and tell these stories. TR had a really great relationship with Booker Washington, a Southern black professor, who TR invited to the White House and became the first black man to ever dine there. TR, as you can imagine, got a lot of backlash for this, and Washington sent a clipping from the Baltimore Herald that recounted a true story of his, Washington's, encounter with the elderly Southern colonel. It went as follows. "Sue, I am glad to meet you," the colonel said. "Always wanted to shake your hand, Sue. I think, Sue, you're the greatest man in America." Washington modestly replied that he thought President Roosevelt was the greatest man in America. "No, Sue," roared the old man, "not by a jugful. I used to think so, but since he invited you to dinner, I think he's a scoundrel." Roosevelt was vastly amused by this story and stated, "I think that is one of the most delightful things I have ever read. It is almost too good to be true." 1904 Olympic Marathon in St. Louis. The #1 finisher drove most of the race. He started the race, got tired and heat exhausted and wanted to drop out. He got in a car to DQ himself and head back to the stadium, but along the way realized he was near the finish line and got out to claim the glory. The #2 finisher was carried across the finish line by his trainers. On a bogus pseudoscience theory, the trainers had been giving him a mixture of brandy, egg whites, and rat poison instead of water. When it came out that the #1 finisher had driven most of the course, this guy was given the gold despite the help from his trainers to finish. For some reason, the #3 finisher was just a regular guy who did nothing unusual. In this case, ordinary was extraordinary. The #4 finisher was a Cuban mailman, who had raised the money to attend the Olympics by running around his entire country and asking for donations. When he landed in New Orleans, He lost all the money gambling. He managed to scrounge enough to get to St. Louis and attend the Olympics. However, he had no money for athletic gear, so he ran in dress shoes and pants hacked off at the knee by a fellow racer who happened to have a knife. He probably would have come in first had it not been for the hour-long nap he took on the side of the road after eating rotten apples he found at an orchard near the course. The number 9 and number 12 finishers were from South Africa, and ran barefoot. South Africa didn't actually send a delegation, these were students who just happened to be in town and thought it sounded fun. #9 was chased a mile off course by angry dogs. Half the participants had never raced competitively before. Some died. St. Louis only had one water stop on the entire run. This, coupled with the dusty road, and exacerbated by the cars kicking up dust, led to several fatalities. The Russian delegation arrived a week late because they were still using the Julian calendar until 1918, while effectively the rest of the world had switched to the Gregorian calendar. Credit to you /Drakn_Pyrotheion for this synopsis, which I have shamelessly stolen and tweaked just a little for clarity and brevity. When the Netherlands was occupied by Nazis in 1940, many people fled to Canada, including Princess Juliana of the Netherlands and her husband Prince Bernhard of Lippe-by-Esteveld. Their daughter, Princess Margriet, was born in Ottawa. Not knowing if the baby would be male, and hence the heir to the throne, Canada declared the maternity ward of the Ottawa Hospital extraterritorial, which means it became international territory. This meant that the baby would derive its nationality only from its mother, making it 100% Dutch. Margriet's older sister, Beatrix, was born in the Netherlands but obviously came along with the family to Ottawa during the war. In school she was called Trixie Orange by her Canadian classmates. She was from the Dutch royal house of Orange-Nassau. I've always liked that detail. She grew up to become Queen of the Netherlands. My wife and I eloped to Ottawa, we're American, and coincidentally ended up naming our daughter Beatrix Alice. Alice is my mother-in-law's name. The Dutch version of Alice, Altje, was my great-great-grandmother's name. She moved here from Holland with my great-great-grandfather in 1892, after having just been married in a village in Winsum, Netherlands. I have a copy of the wedding certificate. The Dutch keep great records. The Nazis used that to their advantage when looking for Jews and other ethnicities in the Netherlands during the war. Fuck those guys. And they stole thousands of Dutch bikes when they fled the country, even ones that had wooden wheels due to the rubber shortage during the war. What's more Dutch than goddamn wooden bike tires? Decades later, when Beatrix ended up marrying a German, it kinda pissed the Dutch off, and a common slogan at the time was Eerst mijn fiets terug, or, First I want my bike back. This is fun. I could do it all day, but I should get back to work. During World War II, a bunch of German soldiers got separated in rural Russia. They were trudging through snow with no food or water for days before finally finding a supply drop that missed its mark. They opened it up and found only black pepper and condoms. Edit, for anyone wondering, my source for this is Storm of War by Andrew Roberts. Unfortunately I can't remember the page number because I read the book a few years ago, but I believe the chapter is called Clash of the Titans. I'm sorry I don't have a more exact source, but I'm a random commenter, not a history teacher. Admiral Zinovy Roshistvinsky of the Imperial Russian Navy was so notorious for throwing his binoculars into the sea during fits of rage that his staff always ensured his flagship had an extra crate of binoculars on board. Some more fun stuff about him: he would make up insulting nicknames for ships and officers he disliked, such as the lecherous slut, the sink by themselves squadron, or the guard's uniform hanger, beat the tar out of crew members that disobeyed him, would fire live ammunition across the bows of errant ships, and was known to pull other ships alongside his just to scream at its captain in front of the entire crew. Despite all this, he was considered one of the best officers in the Russian Navy and was well liked by his crew, and took full blame for his defeat at the Battle of Tsushima in order to save some officers from the death penalty. So while he may have been hot-headed and had high standards for his crew, he was ultimately a fair and honorable man, just doing the best he could with what he had, and probably better than could be expected of anyone else in his position. And honestly, the Russian 2nd Pacific Squadron's voyage is a ridiculous topic in of itself. The amount of sheer incompetence is comical. Trackiniffle has a fantastic video on it, would highly recommend.